I think my resume is there to speak for me when I'm not present. It should be a summary of my work experience and achievements as well.
Basically, here's my take, right? I'll tell you a personal story. Well, it was like near the end of high school and I needed to get a new job, right? And I called up a couple of places. I even looked at, I even called First Watch, and they seemed interested enough. And they asked me to submit a resume for them, right? The problem is that I just really struggled when it came to actually writing a resume. Because some people, especially when you're still in high school, don't know what to put on there. I feel like I have good experience when it comes to working in the service industry,
Right.
but is it enough? Do I have my high school diploma yet? No, I don't.
Right.
So, what are some things that I can write down? I guess the clubs that I was at, a part in. And I looked up video after video after video, and it felt like as if, every person had something different to say.
Right.
So it felt very out of sync. There was no okay, this is the right answer.
Right.
I think my resume says what I'm qualified to do in a very black and white sense. And it has, the things that I've done, but not necessarily who I am. But yeah, lays out kind of step by step what I've been able to do in the real world. But coming out as a college student, a lot of it is high school experience or nannying or whatever. So it's not really a full detailed package of who I am at this point.
Personally, for me, what I think my resume says about me is that no matter where I go, I'm going to strive to be the best that I can be and go above and beyond. What I want my employers to see on my resume is that I have not been the average employee no matter where I go.
I believe they look at some essential things such as, if we're talking a work resume, we're talking about work experience, some skills you may have, some achievements, some projects that you might have participated in as well. If we're talking academic, they're looking at your academic record, your GPA, your the amount of education you've had as well. And yeah, they look for professionalism, and if that itself is not shown, I don't believe that they would take anything else into consideration.
I see it. I've even seen it myself when I worked over there. I was actually really close to my managers, and I remember vividly one of them was looking on Facebook and looking for people that are looking for jobs, in that specific restaurant. And he was like, this is pitiful, this is so sad, people don't know how to write resumes. And I could say that for myself because you're under the assumption that if it has pretty colors, it has your photo on it, and has just your job description, that people are going to see it because it stands out, right? But that's not how it's going to work. It's just going to get thrown in the trash, right? It has to be a certain font, and it just it doesn't really make sense because by the contents of a piece of paper, that's going to demonstrate to you if you're a hard worker or not, and if you're eligible to work at a place. I don't know. I just think it's kind of obsolete. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it kind of depends on if you are actually speaking to someone versus if you're just putting it into a system. So I hope that when people actually ask for my resume, they read it, on a communication basis if I know the person. But I've gone through many experiences where I've applied for jobs online and through websites or different search engines and have heard nothing back. So I don't really know where my resume goes once they reach that point. But hopefully if an actual person gets it, then they read it and go from there.
Well, from what I've heard from friends and people who are in the industry, what I think happens when they receive my resume is that a company will probably run it through some type of system that looks for keywords. If those keywords match up, then they'll probably invite me for an interview. But if it actually gets in front of the eyes of an actual person, then I feel that my resume is strong enough to carry me to invite me to an interview. So what I think happens after they get my resume is they run through some type of computer system that looks for keywords, and if it matches, then they probably give it a look themselves.
It basically wants to summarize the applicants into bulletin points and what they have to offer the company or the employer. and mainly it is to put everybody into like, I want to say, a categorized system, I guess.
I think that like, you know, experience is kind of like necessary in like some places like the service industry.
Yeah.
But it is like great to know, like as an employer, if I was an employer, I would like to know what like the person did in high school or even currently what they're doing in college, right? Because I mean, in some instances, like sometimes like being a hard worker is gonna get it done, and then sometimes having a great mind is gonna get it done, right? And so like if you're working in a great mind industry, like for example, like being a doctor, you know, I'm sorry, like you could probably work in welding all you want, but like do you know anything about like, you know, like do you know anything about medicine? Like you know, have you done any like residency? Are you started residency? Like that stuff does matter, you know, but like I've heard from people like directly, like they've been probably an employer, right? And they like didn't even like look at the resume properly because it's like, oh well, this person didn't do this. Oh, their name, like, and there's like, I don't like bringing it up, but there's also just like racism, you know, in some instances where like
100%.
People will look at someone's name, oh, that sounds like an African American. They're not working, they're not hardworking, or something like that. You know? And it's like it's very sad. But I do think that sometimes applications, like they are required because it gets you where you need to be, like, you know, voiced, right? And having some experience is good when you did something versus like you did nothing. Does that make sense?
Right, exactly.
I think an application process can kind of help weed out certain people. I feel like it's very skill based on what you have accomplished. Very like black and white, like can this person do this, great, they're in, or if you're missing something then they're like automatically disqualified. So I think it kind of helps companies. You know, I'm sure they get a ton of applications, whatever, but I think the application process just kind of helps to decipher immediate yes or no's based off of what you put into your resume or into a computer. The application process has become so black and white on either like, yes, absolutely, you're in, or no way, just because of one thing. So I think the application process no longer has that middle ground where there's means to communicate through, you know, certain skills that you could obtain or how you could get into a company or how you could get into a job. You know, maybe this isn't the right job for you, but we have this option. Now it's very like, oh, you applied for this, well, you got it or you didn't.
I mean, I feel like an application process would be, you know, essential to somebody applying for a job, because they can't just hire anybody out the street, right? You know, because I could just be a runaway felon and, you know, they wouldn't know it. So